Welcome back to Views with Hughes, your Jennifer News. This is Jerome Hughes. Now let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, we're diving deep into Disney's latest disaster, Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler remake. And it wasn't that long ago that, Disney was a company we could count on for wholesome family entertainment, the kind of stuff that, basically brought us together, made us laugh, and maybe even shed a tear or two. But those days are behind us. And this new Snow White live action remake starring Rachel Zegler is a perfect example of how far off the rails they've gone. Now, let's start with the basics here. You see, with the basics, last October, Disney decided to delay the release of the Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler by almost a year, and they finally set a release date March 21st, 2025. And just recently, they dropped the trailer at the D23 convention, but instead of excitement you'd expect for a classic live Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler, it's been met with more skepticism and frustration. Why? Because it's clear Disney is still more interested in pushing their woke agenda than giving us a movie that honors the original masterpiece. Now, I do want to make one thing clear. This isn't just about the movie like Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler. This is about a pattern that we've been seeing from Disney over the last few years. Now, a pattern where they take beloved stories and characters and twist them to fit the politically correct narrative. And we've seen it in their live action remakes, and we've seen it in their newer animated films, and we've even seen it in their theme parks. And it's a full-scale cultural shift that is driving away the very audience that made Disney the powerhouse that it once was, okay? Now, we're going to talk about the dwarfs also. For example, in the original Snow White, the dwarfs were some of the most beloved characters, like Sleepy, Dopey, Grumpy, and even the rest. And these weren't just side characters. They were just the integral part of the story, which each of our own charm and personality. But Disney's original plan for this Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler remake was a ditch to them entirely and replace them with magical creatures played by regular sized actors. And it's like they looked at what made the original special and decided to do the exact opposite for a Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler. Now, thankfully, there was enough backlash from fans over this Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler that Disney had to backtrack only to make another dumb decision. They decided to go ahead and include CGI dwarfs after all, but it's clear this wasn't their first choice for the Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler remake. Now, the fact that they even considered erasing these iconic characters for the Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler shows just how out of touch they are with their audience, and they're more interested in virtue signaling and checking off diversity boxes than staying true to the stories that built their empire in the first place, thanks to Walt Disney. And also, let's not forget, this isn't just an isolated incident. It's part of a much bigger trend we've seen across Hollywood, whether it's Disney, Marvel, or even Lucasfilm, and we're seeing the same story play out and over again. These companies are more focused on pushing a political agenda than creating stories that resonate with audiences, and the result: mediocre films that flop and nobody wants to see, and a whole lot of frustration from the fans who feel like their favorite franchise are being hijacked, okay? But we're going to go ahead and get back to Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler. Now, principal photography for Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler began way back on March 7, 2022, and they wrapped it up in June of that year. But by the time Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler finally hits theaters, it'll have been almost 3 years since production wrapped up. 3 years, people. Now, I'm no film expert, but I can tell you this: when a movie takes that long to come out after it's done filming, it's usually a sign that there are problems behind the scenes. And given Disney's track record lately, I wouldn't even be surprised if, Snow White live action by Rachel Zegler already on a train wreck before it even hits theaters. But there's more. Just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, Disney went back for reshoots for Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler in June 2023. The goal: to insert flashbacks featuring a younger version of Snow White played by actress Emilia Fulcher. And then earlier this summer, they went back to London for even more reshoots. And Gal Gadot, who plays the Evil Queen, confirmed it herself. And of course, Rachel Zegler, who stars as Snow White, was also there for additional photography. Now, reshoots aren't always a bad thing, but when they're happening this late in the game, it usually means there's more serious problems with the movie. And it's like they're trying to go ahead and slap a band-aid on a sinking ship, hoping they will salvage something before it's too late. But here's the thing, no amount of reshoots can fix a movie like Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler. Now that's fundamentally flawed from the start, and given everything we've seen so far, it's clear that this Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler remake is a disaster waiting to happen. All right, and here's where it gets even crazier. Okay, Disney spent a whopping $209 million to produce this Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler, but according to Daily Mail, they're reporting that the actual figure might be close to $330 million. And let that sink in for a moment. Now, Disney is throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at live action Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler that's already been met with backlash and controversy. And you had to wonder, where's all that money going? Because it sure not doesn't seem like it's being spent on making a film that honors the original story. But then again, this is Disney we're talking about, all right? A company that's more than willing to burn through cash if it means pushing their agenda, their woke agenda. We've seen it time and time again, whether it's with their movies, their theme parks, or even their streaming service. They're betting on this new direction, but a bet that's not paying off and fans are walking away. Box office numbers are tanking, and the brand that once stood for quality and family entertainment is now synonymous with political correctness and mediocrity. Okay, so who's one of the people responsible for this live action, the Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler mess? Well, for starters, the script was written by none other than Greta Gerwig, who's known for her feminist takes on pretty much everything she touches, and the director, Mark Webb, the guy who brought us 500 Days of Summer. Now, I don't have anything against these people, okay, personally, but when you put someone like Greta Gerwig in charge of writing Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler, you know you're going to get a movie that's more about pushing a message, a woke message, than telling a story. And let's not forget the cast: Rachel Zegler, Gal Gadot, Andrew Burnap, Antu Kabia, Dejana Gift, and Martin Kleber. It's a lineup that's more focused on ticking off diversity boxes than on delivering a faithful adaptation of the classic tale. And speaking of the cast, let's talk about Rachel Zegler for a moment. You know, in 2023, Rachel Zegler made headlines for all the wrong reasons, as y'all remember when she called the original animated Snow White weird and described Prince Charming as a stalker. Of course, this was an older interview than 2023, but this is the person they chose to play one of the most iconic characters in Disney history, and Rachel Zegler is trashing the original film, but it doesn't stop there. Rachel Zegler even referred to the upcoming remake as PC Snow White. Now, I don't know about you, but when the Star movie is calling it politically correct, that's a pretty big red flag. But this is the problem with Hollywood these days, and they're more interested in tearing down the classics than in celebrating them, all right? They take stories that have stood the test of time, stories that generations of people have loved, and they twist them into something unrecognizable, all in the name of progress and woke ideology. But here's the thing, progress doesn't mean throwing out the past. It doesn't mean rewriting history to fit today's political agenda. And it certainly doesn't mean trashing the legacy of the people who came before us. And guess what? You know who else shared these points, shared these points before? David Hand, the son of one of the original animators of the 1937 Snow White. Now, in a recent interview, he called the Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler a disgrace, and said that his father and Walt Disney, you know, would be turning in their graves if they could see what Disney has done with this remake. And he's absolutely right. This isn't just about one movie. It's about the legacy of Disney as a whole and how far they've strayed from the values that made them a beloved institution in the first place. But here's the thing, woke Disney doesn't seem to care. You know, they're doubling down on their woke agenda, no matter how many fans they alienate in the process. And they're betting that a new audience they're trying to attract will be enough to replace the millions of loyal fans that they've lost. But if the box office numbers for their recent movies are any indication, that bet isn't paying off at all. I mean, just honestly, just look at their recent track record. Lightyear, Strange World, The Little Mermaid remake, one flop after another, and yet Disney keeps pushing forward with their woke agenda, refusing to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, they're doing more harm than good. They're so used to being politically correct that they're forgetting how to make good movies. And until they wake up and realize that their approach isn't working, we're going to just keep seeing more of these woke disasters like Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler. Now, Disney Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler is, well, just basically another example of how out of touch they are with their audience, from the political correctness to the mishandling of the beloved characters. And it's clear that Disney has lost its way. And until they start listening to their fans and stop prioritizing their woke agenda over quality storytelling, we can expect more failures and disappointments from the House of Mouse itself. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Do you think that this movie was a good idea? Are you looking forward to seeing Snow White live action starring Rachel Zegler and stuff? Or do you think it's going to be a flop? If you think it's going to be a flop, how much money do you think it's going to lose? If you think it's going to be successful, how much money do you think it's going to make? Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Also, be sure to include any additional thoughts you may have this particular topic. If you enjoy what I shared this video, go ahead, smash like and share far wide across social media. And if you haven't done so already and you enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, click the bell notification so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.